Welcome to Love to See It, a podcast that is not about the premiere of The Bachelorette season 22.
Instead, we're here today to talk about some just really dark and depressing events involving domestic violence that led up to the cancellation of Taylor Frankie Paul's season.
We are honestly just transparently very sad and we're nervous to have this conversation. We're going to try to approach it in a responsible and nuanced way. And we're going to talk about what led to the cancellation. We're also going to talk about the fallout for the franchise and also just how we can and should be kind of processing all of it.
A little housekeeping before we get into it. If you missed our Love is Blind season 10 coverage, you can scroll back in your feed. Also, of course, as we've said, we recently moved Rich Text over to Patreon, and that's where you can find our sadly newly relevant coverage of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives season 4, as well as our upcoming discussion about the Netflix dating show Age of Attraction. So you can find those conversations and more at patreon.com/richtext.
So before we dive in, we do want to give a trigger warning. We are going to be talking about domestic violence, some of it involving children in some capacity. If you follow the story at all, you know that, but we will be touching on it. So please listen with care. If you or someone you know has been impacted by domestic violence, you can call 800-799-7233 or text BEGIN to 88788.
So just to start off, I feel like it's important to be really transparent about where we've been mentally and emotionally over the last 24 hours. We are taping this on Friday. We wanted to give ourselves a bit of time to try and metabolize everything that has happened over the last couple days. And also, of course, more and more reporting keeps coming out. And I just want to be honest that, like, I've felt like really, really rattled by all of this, like
Yeah.
emotionally and physically. I don't know if I'm like extra hormonal right now. I think I'm always kind of an emotionally gentle person, sensitive person. And this just feels really, really dark and really sad. And the ripple effects are just so wide. And, I think it's hard to know how to have these discussions in a way that doesn't cause more harm. And I just want to be clear that, like, we are doing everything in our power to try and do this in as responsible of a way as we can.
Yeah, like, our number one fear is that we will cause harm in how we talk about this show, and especially in a moment like this that's very sensitive. This isn't the first time that the show has left me very rattled, feeling sick to my stomach, wondering how I was going to cover what we just saw or learned about the franchise or about someone who was featured on the franchise. Um, it's certainly not the first time. Like, now
No.
that I think on it, it's happened many times, and there have been times when we felt like, how can we ever find joy in the show again? Right? And that's how I'm feeling right now, but it does feel, I think, bigger because of the nature of what we have seen, the ongoing nature of the situation. It's very hard to, like, viscerally, uh, see that footage. I didn't even see all of it. Just the screenshots and the little bit that I saw made me so upset that I couldn't keep watching, just to be fully transparent. Um,
Don't
it's
worry. I watched it several
yeah, I
times.
don't know. I'm I know that it's, like, incredibly hard, and a lot of people have struggled with, the emotional fallout of even seeing that, and imagine what
Yeah.
it must have been like, especially for the children in the room. I have a 6-year-old. Um, it just, like, really hit too close to home. I, like, could not watch it.
And I think
Um,
that's completely fair. And I just want to be clear that, like, I don't want to encourage anyone to consume really triggering, upsetting footage ever. And, like, certainly not in this case.
yeah, we know enough. I think that because of the extent and the nature of what we have seen, this feels like by far the biggest situation of this kind. And also because it involves the star of the show, because it was information that was fairly publicly known about the star of the show when she was cast. Um, and because we have since learned that the network clearly had sufficient evidence that this was not fully a situation that was in the past before they proceeded with filming the show, that all makes it feel like sort of the most massive, like, mega scandal that could hit the show. Like, all of the elements of different scandals that the show has had involving men with abuse allegations or sexual assault allegations, different scandals like that. This kind of, like, bundles together a lot of the worst parts of those scandals.
Yeah, and it
And
also involves a person that a lot of us have spent a lot of time watching and connecting with in some capacity. And I think that, like, in our nervous systems makes it all feel a little bit harder to metabolize.
yeah.
So all of that is kind of coming together. We're going to run down a little bit of background. We assume that most people listening have a good amount of context at this point on who Taylor Frankie Paul is, her history, how she ended up as the star of The Bachelorette, and the allegations that have come out. But we do want to just give a little bit of a primer.
Yeah, so Taylor Frankie Paul is the star of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Prior to that, she had risen to fame via TikTok. She was part of this collective of young Mormon moms who made content together. They called themselves Mom Talk. That was sort of blown up to even greater national prominence by this soft swinging scandal involving several of the other couples in their Mormon social circle. She and her ex husband, Tate, were involved, as well as a few of the other people they knew. They were like, getting together to do stuff, and boundaries were crossed. She ended up going on TikTok Live and brought it to a national stage to talk about kind of the details of what went down. This really got the attention of reality TV producers. She was approached about a reality show that became Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and a bunch of other Mormon mom talkers in her circle were cast as well. She split from her husband, Tate, after the scandal, as did, I think, most, if not all, of the other couples involved in that. So at the same time that the show was sort of coming into fruition, Taylor had gotten into this on and off toxic relationship with someone named Dakota Mortensen. They met on social media shortly after her divorce, and soon they were making TikToks together. Like, I remember when he showed up on the scene because I was paying some attention to her at that time. And their relationship from early on was notably quite tumultuous. In February 2023, about 8 months into that relationship, and while Taylor was filming the beginnings of the first season of Secret Lives, police were called to the home by Dakota. He accused Taylor of physically assaulting him in front of her children, her two children, with her ex husband during a domestic dispute. There was an allegation that she had thrown these stools, that one of them had potentially hit her daughter. Um, she was arrested and charged with felony aggravated assault, domestic violence in the presence of a child, misdemeanor child abuse, and criminal mischief. And she ultimately pled that down to felony aggravated assault in the third degree. That was going to be downgraded again to a Class A misdemeanor if she kept to her plea agreement terms for 3 years. So she's been on probation. The terms of that include sobriety, and she made getting sober sort of part of her storyline on the show. She sought mental health treatment, and I think a lot of viewers hoped that that meant that she had kind of separated herself from the influences that led her into such a dark place. The video of that incident did not become public at the time, but some of the details were reported on, obviously, as she was like convicted.
By the Salt Lake Tribune, who seemed to have reviewed video footage but did not publish that footage more widely.
So after this, they reconciled. Taylor ended up getting pregnant. By the time cameras picked up for the rest of season 1 of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, she was expecting their son Ever, who is now 2 years old. He is their only child. And so for a while after that, her storyline revolved around trying to like make things work with Dakota, but they were always breaking up, having fights. Um, And eventually they decided to part and work on like healthy co-parenting. After like a season of this, they were like, we're doing better. Maybe we can try to get back together. But that quickly crashed and burned as well. And by the end of season 3, it seemed like they had broken up for good because it came out that he had exchanged suggestive text messages with Taylor's very close family friend. And the end of season 3 is sort of like, I can never consider Dakota again. It's over. That was what was happening when The Bachelorette was announced. Meanwhile, they're filming season 4, and that was just aired. What that shows us is this whole process leading up to the day before Taylor leaves to film the Bachelorette. We see them beginning to engage again. He is hooking up with women, including women very close to her. She is lashing out at him and getting sort of emotionally involved, even though they are not together. They end up sleeping together, and they're back in this like toxic cycle, even though everyone around them is like, please stop. This is very bad. They end up sleeping together the night before she leaves for filming and can't get out of bed in the morning, misses her flight, and almost does not show up for The Bachelorette. And clearly, like, at that point, not showing up would have been the right decision.
Honestly, yes. And also important to note, again, all of this is on camera, and all of this
Yeah,
was then packaged for Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and then shown to the world leading up to The Bachelorette.
100%. They're doing a TikTok like 6 hours before she leaves for The Bachelorette, 3 hours before she leaves for The Bachelorette. They're showing her on a FaceTime with Dakota in the car from the airport in LA to film The Bachelorette. They're telling each other that they love each other. He's saying, save a rose for me. And she doesn't say, no, it's over for good. You know, they're clearly still deeply entangled, and the show is turning that into content
And you can
instead
feel
of,
the desperation of everyone in their lives who start to frame The Bachelorette as an opportunity Taylor needs to take in order to literally force a physical separation between herself and Dakota. Like, that is the level of toxicity that is present within this relationship. And again, all of this is being used for content. And I think that after we saw this latest season, it was hard to conclude anything other than the fact that Taylor was not in a mentally or emotionally stable place to film The Bachelorette. But of course, despite all of this being on camera, the network decided to forge ahead.
right. And at the time, we got into that a little bit more in our rich text episode about the back half of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. So after filming wrapped, it slowly started to become clear that there was more drama or perhaps something more serious happening between Taylor, Frankie, Paul, and Dakota since filming. There were like comments, cryptic comments from like Dakota's girlfriend, or I think now ex-girlfriend, who he
And
dated
roommate.
during this period, his roommate. Early in March, I think his roommate or friend commented on one social media post that Taylor might get locked up with like a siren emoji, and everyone was like, what's he talking about? News ended up breaking on Sunday that there had been a pause on filming Secret Lives of Mormon Wives following another blow up between the two. And Michaela and Macy, who are also stars on this show, have since confirmed on social media that they did not continue with filming because the rest of the cast did not feel comfortable with filming while the situation was ongoing. And there was a question about safety. So, further reporting then came out on Monday and Tuesday that there had been allegations of physical abuse on both Dakota and Taylor's sides following at least one dispute between them. Police were called after one. No arrests were made. But he has alleged, I think, multiple instances of physical assault. Her side has claimed that he like got physical with her during a car ride because they were arguing, and then she like spilled a drink on the Dakota in the car seat, like the seat of the car. His side says that once she followed him to his car, grabbed his face, and threw a drink on him through the car window. And he also says that she allegedly, like during another incident, choked him with his necklace. He has said that their son was present for some of these encounters. So we're not gonna like go into any further detail on that, but those are kind of like the kinds of allegations that have been coming out. And there is reportedly now an open DCFS investigation because Dakota is alleging abuse of Ever. And the Draper City Police Department told Us Weekly that allegations have been made in both directions. Both parties were reportedly ordered to undergo psych evaluations. So there's an open investigation for DCFS, also through the police department. So there's a lot still like being worked through in the justice system. TMZ and People also reported that Dakota has filed for an order of protection against Taylor this week and asked for temporary custody of Ever.
Yeah. So all of that is still ongoing and open. And it seemed like at first, even in the wake of these new allegations, that ABC was planning to move ahead with the Bachelorette premiere. Screeners of the premiere were sent to some members of the media. We were among those people. We did watch it. And Taylor Frankie Paul was still doing some rounds of press in New York City, again, as this news was breaking. She spoke to E! Entertainment briefly at a press event and said, quote, that it would be so freeing to just tell the whole story, but she was trying to protect her child and her family. She did directly seem to deny certain claims of child abuse, saying, quote, I've never touched my children. On GMA, she gave a brief interview. She said, quote, I'm a person that will always speak my truth, and that's what I'm known for when the time is right. But right now, just trying to be in the present moment and focus on this, but my kids come first. Dakota then made a statement through a rep to EW saying Dakota's number one priority here is protecting Ever. He knew there was a possibility it could come out, this news, but he was not going to be the one to proactively do that because he has always wanted a decent relationship with Taylor. It's been really hard to achieve that, but he wants to co-parent well. He was just hoping that if he says nothing, as he usually does, it would go away. He's never done any kind of sit-down interview about his side.
Mm. Yeah. So on Thursday afternoon, TMZ ended up dropping video footage of the 2023 assault, the one that she pled guilty to and was on probation for, apparently recorded by Dakota. Again, that footage is very upsetting. And obviously, when this video was released, the reaction was pretty swift from the public. You know, Taylor's representative told TMZ that the video was, quote, selectively edited and released, quote, to distract from Mortensen's own behavior. And while some of that may be true, and like we simply only know what's publicly available, and that's just the reality of the situation, it's also true that it's very hard to watch that video and get excited about watching her premiere in a couple of days. I watched it. I didn't watch it. I saw the stills and watched like 2 seconds of it, and I was like, if I were her ex-husband, I would not want my kids to be around this person anymore. Like I just can't.
It's
hard
it's deeply upsetting and disturbing footage. Like it feels important to note, just to be factual, that the recording begins in the middle of the incident. We do not know what happened before, but as you said, we do know what we saw in that video, and it is a deeply visceral and deeply upsetting experience. And you see that behavior, and it is simply not behavior that can ever be justified, and certainly not behavior that makes you then want to watch someone search for love. It makes you worry about other people's safety in their presence and their own mental, emotional, and physical safety.
We saw that this news had come out when we were about to sit down to tape our recap of the premiere. You know, I was like doing my mascara or something when I saw this come up.
Same.
We had taken our like 15 pages of notes on it, and we suddenly were just completely paralyzed, and we just had to sit down and process together. And what did become clear to us very quickly is that we couldn't cover the season. And especially with these new, still outstanding investigations happening that seem to pertain to similar allegations. And we were starting to figure out how we were going to handle the fact that the show was airing, when we couldn't cover it. Like, this is the and we've seen so many dark moments on the show, and we've always felt like even when the show gets dark, it's our responsibility to cover the dark parts. Like, that is why we started covering the show to begin this, and not because we think the show is like a virtuous and wonderful show that like should be promoted, but to critique it. And I guess that this was the line where we really felt like we could not responsibly recap the show anymore. And that's, I think, when we felt, okay, if we can't recap it, how are they gonna air the show?
Right,
Like,
I think we
this is
felt
clearly
like
that kind of line where they're going to be compelled to cancel it.
yeah, I think we started to feel like the only potential response was to cancel the season, and kind of when we were in the midst of talking about how we were going to address this, they made that decision fairly swiftly to
Yeah,
pull
I
the
have to
season.
I have to believe, from what I've heard and also just common sense, that, like, advertisers were fleeing, that they were, like,
Yeah.
tripping over themselves to not be associated, and you can't make money from the season if no one's advertising. You can say at a certain point, like, oh, well, all news is good news or all publicity is good publicity. You can say, like, at least people are talking. But everyone could want to watch the show out of some sort of lurid, gawking instinct. But if no one's paying for the ads to accompany it, then the network is not making money.
Yeah, I just don't think they had another option, and it was announced. They put out a statement from Disney Entertainment saying, in light of the newly released video just surfaced today, we have made the decision to not move forward with the new season of The Bachelorette at this time, and our focus is on supporting the family.
Yeah, and it is a very carefully worded statement. They clearly do not want to completely spike the season. They have continued her press rollout amid some pretty alarming headlines. They wanted to press ahead, and now in the statement, they say not to move forward at this time. Maybe we'll move forward later. We've put the brakes on right now. They're going to wait and see how the discourse evolves, right? And if the
I'm gonna
advertisers
guess right
settle.
now they will not be moving forward. I
Yeah,
cannot see a path forward.
I agree. Like, it's very difficult to see how that could ever happen, but it's clear that are
Wanted to leave
there's
the
they
possibility
wanna leave
open.
that open. Yeah. It is crazy to think that they filmed an entire expensive season and, like, we watched the premiere.
The
They
production
were
value was
investing in the
high.
season. Yeah. This
Yeah.
was their big swing. This was their chance to, like, make The Bachelorette the center of conversation again, and they were going all out in the most Bachelor way that they knew how to do, and now no one's going to see it probably ever, or at least for a long time. Probably ever.
Probably ever.
After the announcement, Taylor and Dakota both made statements. Taylor's rep told Variety, quote, Taylor is very grateful for ABC's support as she prioritizes her family's safety and security after years of silently suffering extensive mental and physical abuse as well as threats of retaliation. Taylor is finally gaining the strength to face her accuser and taking steps to ensure that she and her children are protected from any further harm. There are too many women who are suffering in silence as they survive aggressive, jealous ex partners who refuse to let them move on with their lives. Taylor has remained silent out of fear of further abuse, retaliation, and public shaming. She is currently exploring all of her options, seeking support, and preparing to own and share her story. So I was like a little bit surprised by this statement, but they're clearly, the crisis PR is crisis
Yeah, I mean,
PRing.
I would have liked to see at least acknowledgement here of responsibility for an incident that she has literally pled guilty to and admitted to and face legal consequences for. I think
Yeah.
that should have bare minimum have been acknowledged regardless of the other circumstances.
I agree. Dakota also responded through his rep to People, saying, as anyone who has seen the video will understand, this is a deeply upsetting situation. I am unfortunately used to these baseless claims about me and our relationship, which I categorically deny. I'm focusing on our son and his safety and hope that Taylor will do the same. So We're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we're going to get into some of like the bigger context of all of this.
And we are back. So, one thing that we wanted to discuss before we get into what this cancellation kind of means for the larger um, Bachelor franchise and reality TV world, we did want to offer a bit more context generally about the dynamics that can arise within domestic violence relationships. Obviously, there's just a lot we do not know and probably will never know about the nuances of Taylor Frankie Paul and Dakota Mortensen's particular relationship. There are a few things we know for sure. They have been trapped in a toxic and abusive dynamic for years. Taylor's daughter and perhaps other children were put in real physical danger at various moments. There is no justifying the behavior that we have seen in that video, and we would never do so. Um, and also, there are likely other dynamics at play that that we simply do not have the information to assess right now. And like,
Yeah.
we're certainly not going to pretend that we have any business definitively litigating allegations of domestic violence, especially when there are kind of opposing charges being made on either side.
Yeah. I agree, and this is why we're anxious to talk about it in these like murky situations where we don't know very much. We could be, you know, in only hoping to be helpful and seek justice that we could spread a harmful narrative.
Yeah.
And that is like the opposite of our intention here. And so we're not going to try to come to any conclusions, as you said.
We just want to, I think, try to hold space for all of the nuances that could be at play here. And I think that is kind of the hardest thing to do in a lot of these situations is to hold open the possibility for what we don't know while still holding people accountable for the things that we do know. And that's like what we are trying our best to do. But we did want to mention some patterns that can emerge in many DV relationships that are worth being aware of here. Again, we don't know that these dynamics were necessarily present or not within this particular relationship, but it does feel important to note. One of these things is reactive abuse. Um, I pulled this definition from like a legal website through the NHS in the UK. This is quote, reactive abuse happens when a victim of abuse reacts to that abuse in a way that could include physical violence or shouting of their own. This isn't because the victim is an abuser, rather that they have been a victim of abuse for such a period of time that they have themselves lashed out. This kind of emotional manipulation will often see the abuser gaslighting the victim. They may tell the victim they have imagined the abuse, that they are the abuser, that they are mentally unstable or violent. Many DV survivors that I have seen have spoken out on social media. And again, DV is not like a monolithic experience. And people who have survived these kind of dynamics, I think, come to seeing this situation from a variety of perspectives. But I did want to call out that there are a critical mass of people who have posted, including people who have like therapeutic backgrounds, saying that they see some patterns of their own experiences with an abuser in Dakota's behavior. Again, this does not mean that we know what the particular dynamic is in this relationship, nor, again, does it excuse putting anyone, and especially a child, in emotional and physical danger. It does just feel worth holding space for the possibility that reactive abuse is playing a role in this relationship.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of us who have watched Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, we've seen Taylor's sort of scary traits, right? Like she can be very explosive. She has a temper. She doesn't have much impulse control. And we have also seen patterns of behavior from Dakota that kind of like hit a lot of people's spidey sense, like that
Yeah.
he seems like he is trying to sort of gaslight or manipulate her a lot, and that he is sort of picking these critical moments when it's important that she be stable, and choosing that moment to sort of instigate some sort of to drop a revelation about his own behavior that's going to upset her or spark a fight. And so there is that. It's been like for years, or a year and a half, I guess, since the show started, it has been like kind of disturbing people to watch how he seems to be sometimes kind of handling those dynamics.
And often in a way where his actions are kind of just out of frame. And what we are
Right.
seeing first and foremost is her reaction.
Right. At the same time, that is also such a limited and constructed part
Yes.
of the situation. We don't know the totality of their relationship. We don't actually know how the full cycles have been playing out. We don't know who is kind of leading the dynamic. And we have also seen some of Taylor's disturbing behavior patterns. And so, like, again, we are just really hesitant to make any conclusion here, and that is why it is sometimes, like, scary to see how quickly people are jumping into one camp or another, because but I think that, it also makes sense that people would after some of the things that they have seen. Um, the 19th had a good article, providing some context on this, and media researcher Soraya Jacardi Vargas talked a little bit about this. She said that viewers basically don't have the full picture of this relationship, and audiences are going to recognize physical violence as abuse, right? That's easy for us to grasp as viewers, but coercive control or surveilling a partner are harder to depict or pick up on screen. She said, quote, "When abuse becomes entertainment, we can become desensitized to the severity of the topic. We only have pieces of the puzzle and we don't necessarily know how it will all play out. But what I've seen in the discourse so far is a lot of folks that have already jumped to a conclusion about where the responsibility lies."
Yeah, that quote really hit for me.
Yeah, it is like, and I think that part of the reason that they absolutely did have to cancel the show is that I do think that it has a very damaging effect on, like, our society and the brand, obviously, but, like, on all of us to see this kind of um, incident, to see domestic violence being sort of normalized or
Yeah.
brushed aside. I don't think anyone is defined by the worst thing that they did. I think there should be space for healing and growth and redemption, but as when we've seen other, like, abusive people from reality shows continue to get platforms, you do start to think, like, are we just all getting too used to treating that as, like, an acceptable part of our mainstream entertainment, that, like, yes, some people will get hurt, but it's part of what makes them a star.
No, absolutely. And I think that we kind of count on certain lines being held to by the people in power who are making casting and programming decisions. And I think that's part of why this has felt like such a violation, like so a dereliction of duty on the part of so many people to protect the safety of so many people. And that includes like the emotional safety and health, frankly, of audiences.
I think one thing that also that Taylor's camp seemed to be hoping would come into play for them, and that I think for a lot of us watching seemed relevant, is that all of this was being made public at such a key moment when it seemed calculated to derail her season. And, this incident has been out there. She has been through the justice system for that. She has been held accountable. Was it a sufficient accountability? Is another question. But, like, she had and taken on consequences for that already. And why was this all coming out at this moment? Why is this video coming out at this moment? It's unclear where the video came from. I think a lot of people have speculated that TMZ procured it from the police file. They do have their sources. I don't know if it's something that you could FOIA or if it was sealed, but TMZ has their ways. People have speculated that Dakota's camp leaked it. There's no confirmation either way. But it's clear that his camp was behind a lot of this dribbling out.
Certainly
And
with TMZ. I mean, if you read the stories, that becomes quite
right.
obvious.
And
And
like
I think some
this,
people also noted that this dribbling out of information did not happen surrounding the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives season 4 premiere. Um,
right.
Despite the fact that that was just a short while ago, and it was also weeks after the most recent alleged incident occurred.
Yeah. Plus there is the fact that like having this footage of Taylor's daughter out there seems really harmful to
Yeah.
her. And
I
that's really the hardest thing to kind of
sorry, I'm gonna cry. Like,
absorb.
I think this is like what I'm struggling with having this video out there. I think it's so harmful to Taylor's now 8-year-old daughter that possibly like the most traumatic moment of her young life is now being splashed about the internet and is gonna live there forever. Like,
Yeah.
her friends will forever be able to see this. Her friends' parents, this will forever be at the top of her Google searches and available for people to consume for whatever reason, like forever.
Yeah.
And again, while I certainly have no problem with Taylor being held accountable for these actions, I just wonder what is like the cost versus the benefit of
Yeah.
having this full video in the public sphere. And it does feel to me like there was probably a judgment call made by like the Salt Lake Tribune back in 2023 to like have reviewed this footage and not have published it. And I
Yeah.
just wonder what TMZ's calculus was. And to me, that is
I
like,
mean,
right.
it's
I guess we
TMZ.
know. But to me, that's the most upsetting piece. It's not because I'm like, we need to protect Taylor from facing fallout around the Bachelorette. I'm just like, this
Yeah.
does harm to her daughter, who was the ultimate victim in this.
Yeah. And I mean, it's hard to talk about, right? Because it's like the fact that he released a lot of information, or his camp did, potentially this video, we don't know if they were behind that. Like the fact that they did it at this moment, it's hard not to see that fitting into this pattern that we've seen. At the same time, eh, you know, she did endanger her daughter in that way. Like she did those things that we saw. And it appears likely, it has been alleged that she has been falling back into that. And if there are new incidents that happened in the last month, and her season of The Bachelorette is proceeding full steam ahead with the network kind of like sanitizing her, honestly, celebrating her, lifting her up as an aspirational figure. We talk about this all the time with men on The Bachelor, like that she's being given a nice sort of glossy package of like desirability and status. And if you're in the midst of like dealing with the fallout of a domestic violence incident in which she allegedly attacked her partner or ex-partner, potentially while a 2-year-old child was present, according to some of the allegations, I can certainly understand feeling a sense of urgency that like that should not be allowed to proceed. And
Yeah,
that's what makes it hard, is that we actually do not know exactly what happened, and I
that's the
feel
thing.
very little trust in either of these people, and we don't know. And it's
No,
just
I agree
that's why I
completely
think a
with
lot
you.
of the commentary, and ours is gonna go this way too, is just like, this is so incredibly fucking sad and heartbreaking, and we just feel sick about it.
Yeah,
And all
we
we
just feel sick, and I think that's why I go back to, like, I am so angry that, like, it got to this point.
yeah.
You
Yeah, and,
know?
like, there are a lot of people that we can talk about their roles in that and whether people should have known at different points, including the audience, including us. Um, but for now, like, what we know is that this family is not safe or healthy, and I'm worried about honestly, about Taylor because I can't imagine what this must be doing
Yeah.
to her mental state. I'm worried about her children. I'm just like I'm just worried about everyone, and I also am, like, really sad that this is perhaps the end of The Bachelorette and how it's all going down.
Same. No, you nailed it. I feel exactly the same way.
So, like, what is the fallout going to be of the cancellation? It feels like for us, like, huge, obviously. Like, our show started as a Bachelor franchise show. When we first started the podcast at HuffPost, it was seasonal. We only put out episodes when The Bachelor was on. And now a lot of Bachelor shows like ours cover more of the universe of reality dating shows that are out there. But it's a tentpole, and for a lot of shows, it's their focus. There's also the crew on the show. Like it's not an easy time to be looking for work in the entertainment industry.
No, and all of those people work on, like, a contract basis, so they don't have benefits, they work project by project. It seems likely that at least, like, the post-production crew who was currently working on the season is probably just basically shit out of luck and out of pay and
Yeah.
out of this job.
And while I've seen very little sympathy for the men of this season, and I understand that because no one is sympathetic to people who just like want to be influencers by pretending they're looking for love, this is kind of a career choice. It means giving up other career opportunities potentially. It means maybe taking leave or quitting jobs. People are always talking about quitting their job to go on the show. It means spending time away from your kids in the case of 3 of these men or other people that you're close with, and sometimes for up to 8 weeks. Like, that's not a small thing, and then they get very emotionally wrapped up in these storylines, and it's all in service of starring in this show that is
And also
now
they
not
aren't
going to come
paid. Like,
out.
it does
They
feel
aren't
worth
paid.
noting that they are
Yeah,
not paid to be on the show.
exactly, like, their only compensation is whatever
Exposure.
recognition that they get from that exposure. I'm not saying that they're the primary victims in the
No.
situation, but, like, there are a lot of people who were invested in this season in different ways and had made various sacrifices or have certain professional expectations to be able to, like, support themselves or their families that are all now in a very bad position because of this blowing up. Men from the cast have started to react a little bit. Some of them have posted on social media. I saw Brandon had just like posted 3 dots on his story, like an ellipses. And spoiler for the season that will never air, her rumored winner, Doug, posted this like shadowy selfie video from a car, I think, sending up prayers and love for Taylor and saying her moment was blocked. So that was interesting to me. We have heard that they split because of Dakota
But
months
then they
ago.
were also just spotted filming together, like, a few days ago.
Yeah. So that
So, who knows?
I'm sure that ABC Crisis PR has been also like trying to get people to sort of help staunch the bleeding a little bit, but this definitely gives me the impression that she and her winner are still on good terms. And I can't imagine seeing all this come out and still be in her corner after we broke up. So I'm like, wow, they seem to still be friendly. According to the Mormon Wives Report, like Instagram gossip account, Taylor commented or something. She said saying like, "Oh, my heart goes out to him." Bandage heart emoji, so sweet. I don't know where this comment was posted. It's not on the story, but then like she also commented in the comments of that post because someone was like, "I can't believe she's on her phone," and she was like, I'm like always on my phone. I'm still working." I was like,
Put it
"What?"
away. We gotta all
What?
put the phone
Sometimes
down.
the work is going away.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what you need to do.
And you definitely need to do that right now. Yeah,
This is like, and we
Jesus.
talked a little bit about this in our rich text, but like her damage control this week was really tone deaf. And I know there's not much that she can say, regardless of the truth of the allegations, but
I
a
think
lot of
just
it was
yeah,
really focused on how hard it was for her and how sad she was that she couldn't enjoy the week of the premiere. And her statements have all kind of reflected back to that, like, this is so hard for Taylor. And I don't see any kind of acknowledgement from her or her camp of like
culpability. And I hope
culpability.
that I hope there will be space for healing, and I hope that she can take some of that accountability in the public sphere eventually. I also think right now, as you said, the work is to just not, and to not try to be understood, not try to say anything, like take space, put the phone down, go
Right. Like
away.
that's why it was so weird to even see her doing the press this week because it was clear that she couldn't really say anything that would help.
No.
So instead, all she was able to say was either complete nothingness, which she didn't even do. She said things that actively made it seem weirder. Like, I, and then also she has repeatedly claimed that she has never hurt her children. And I think that's just very hard for people to believe after seeing that video. And it creates a sense of like greater distrust that like you've been telling us that at least you're a great mom and you are, no matter what, would never hurt your kids. Um, for us to then see that makes us question your account of the situation. So obviously, the contestants are having mixed reactions. One contestant spoke to E anonymously and said, "Part of me is just so fucking pissed. We all gave up so much to go do this. We all came in with open hearts. We treated her kindly and respectfully and gave her a second chance. We tried to let her turn over a new leaf, and we all believed her when she said she did. Obviously, the way she acted and the way she treated all of us in hindsight is just a waste of time, a waste of energy, a waste of emotional intelligence."
I get
And
that.
yeah, I mean, I feel I'm sure I would feel very similarly if I were a contestant, to be honest. There are ways in which it is like narrativized how it is acceptable for the lead to kind of handle conflict with the contestants, right? Like, is it empowered, putting them in their place, like not taking any shit, or is it like nasty, lashing out, etc.? I think over time, the audience has become more uncomfortable seeing men take a firmer line as the lead. They don't want to see a lead who is like a dick to the women, right? But there has been more appetite for the like fiery Bachelorette, and for some reason, right? Because women are often expected to kind of accept bad treatment in a docile manner. And so we're like, yeah, like you tell him. But if you're telling yourself, like, hey, this is a strong, badass woman and she's just telling it like it is, this kind of information might recontextualize that for you into like, wait, why was I okay with her screaming at me? Like I think that's sort of interesting to me. I am a little worried that like the way that this could also feed into certain narratives about like expecting women to once again like adhere to a more like traditionally feminine standard in their comportment because of like
Yeah.
this scandal in which
God.
like a woman behaved objectively abusively is also alarming. Obviously, a lot of people are gonna take the hit here. There might be legal battles involving ABC and Warner Bros. Warner Brothers about who should be left holding the bag or like which executive is gonna take the fall. Taylor, Frankie, Paul could be open to litigation. I mean, they sign contracts, and at the same time, they knew a lot of the information was out there that ultimately led to this cancellation. So that might complicate their case.
Obviously, this is a sizable loss for
Yeah.
ABC Disney. At the same time, Vulture did publish a report speaking to like TV industry insiders who essentially suggested that like there are ways on the network level to like write this off as a loss and like be fine. Like they can take that hit despite the fact that the hit is quite sizable.
Yeah.
The
I
people
thought this
I'm
was
more worried about
interesting.
like the crew
Right. No, we're
on a financial level.
for sure, but I'm interested by this because
Yeah.
of this is like one of those systems that like goes into structuring how culture is made now. And like I've seen people complain about this in the past that studios will take write-offs on movies rather than publish them in any form. If you never publish it, if you never
Right, you can
release
take it as
it,
a loss.
you
Oh
can take
yeah,
it as a
this
loss. And if you put it out there and it doesn't recoup enough, then you're actually going to lose more from putting it out there. But this is kind of the use case,
yeah.
right? Like they basically just like threw $20 million onto a bonfire. They flushed it down the toilet. Like they produced this expensive season of the show that's now like going to be lining litter boxes. Like it's crazy. And so it was fascinating to read this Vulture report where the insiders, like industry insiders, were sort of like, "Oh, it's fine. Like it's not good, but like they'll just they'll fill the programming hole by doing reruns, and it's no big deal. Like Sunday's not a huge night, and then they'll write off the costs, and it'll be like not the end of the world. They'll forge ahead."
Well, I'm just like, of course the network will actually be fine.
Right. Well, I didn't think the network was gonna, like, collapse like a dying star, right? The brand, the franchise, that will suffer a lot, but the network is going to have more ways to wiggle out of the
I
fallout.
mean, doesn't that just feel so fundamentally within our culture? Like the corporation will be fine. And
Right.
that's what's most important.
Thank God the
No.
network will be okay. On that note, we're gonna take a quick break. When we get back, we will get into some more questions about the responsibility for this mess, where it lies, and how we should all be reflecting on this, where the franchise can go from here.
And we are back. So, who is responsible for this mess? We certainly need to talk about the network. At the center of a lot of these decisions and these, what we can now see very clearly now, were very poor decisions on the part of the network, seems to be one thing: money. I
It's
mean,
always money.
it's always money. No surprise there. Secret Lives of Mormon Wives has really become the like reality TV jewel within the Disney, Hulu, ABC cinematic universe. The cultural moment, I think we've discussed this in our past coverage of Secret Lives, but the cultural moment we're in was really like ripe for, I think, the kind of careful mix of what these women brought to the table, continue to bring to the table. These fundamentally conservative upbringings and underpinnings, religious trauma, raw messiness, healing, deconstruction, awakening. It kind of hits a lot of, there's something for everyone sort of in this mix.
Yeah. And that's always been bound up in their sort of contradictory image, right? Like they are avowedly part of this very conservative religious community that really prizes what I think a lot of Americans would think of as like traditional gender roles and even aesthetics, looking very conventionally beautiful according to like a white centric standard is huge within Mormon culture, you know. And at the same time, as we have that conservative religious underpinning and all of those like very conservative traditional ideas about women's roles and appearances, we also have the ways in which they seem to be flouting that, pushing back on it in a very like messy entertainment primed way. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it really
I mean, it's just blown
captures
up.
those like divisions in our culture in a
Yeah. And
sense.
as a result of those things, it has done incredibly well. Their rising stars have spawned all of these new opportunities, many of them, which, great for the network, fall within the Disney, Hulu, ABC umbrella, namely Dancing with the Stars and The Bachelorette. Like the network is clearly deploying this talent in order to boost other shows.
Vanderpump Villa, by the
And
way. Who's
Vanderpump
watching
Villa.
Vanderpump Villa? I have only considered watching it, and I still haven't, but I would never have even considered watching it if it were not for the fact that people from the show didn't keep going on the show and generating storylines for Secret Lives of Mormon Wives.
No,
And I
it's
keep
so
being like, do I
true.
have to watch that show now? Like, it's synergy. It's all synergy. They're trying to lift all the boats of all
And
their reality programming.
and it also means that the cast members of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives are always working. And that's something that became, I think, very legible to the audience watching season 4. The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives production schedule is kind of punishing. These women seem to be filming nearly constantly. I mean, they've been putting out multiple seasons of the show per year,
Yeah,
which
I think that's
is
why people have started to think that the show has been on for longer than it has.
right. It has
It
not been
premiered
on for
in
that
what,
long.
like fall 2024? It's been, or summer, fall 2024. It has not even been 2 years. There have been 4 seasons.
Right, they're in the midst of production on season 5. That is what has been paused. Like it kind of never ends. These cast members have not really had a break. And we see many of them like almost break down emotionally and physically from like the sheer exhaustion and overwhelm of all of this. And that is like within the text of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And arguably no one has been stretched thinner than Taylor Frankie Paul as the central figure and kind of like the linchpin of this cultural juggernaut.
Yeah. And she was taking on this extremely intense, full time new gig during a break in filming. And so there was no break in filming for her. And she spoke to Rebecca Jennings for Vulture about this. Actually, this was fascinating. This profile that dropped this morning, because it was being written about what was expected to be, or in preparation for what was expected to be the Bachelorette premiere. And obviously, uh, the profile turned out a little differently. But she does talk about how much she's struggling with burnout, with the filming schedule. She said, I feel like I was more healthy in The Bachelorette because it was like I wasn't in survival mode, and I'm in survival mode at home. She said that she's overwhelmed to the point that she feels suffocated. I I really feel like these women are, it's hard for people to think of filming a reality show as hard work, but could see in the physical bodies of these women in season 4 that they are
Yeah.
not okay.
Oh,
And whether we
absolutely.
as people who have never filmed a show think it's intense or not, it's clearly too much.
I mean, I feel exhausted when we record a 2-hour podcast,
Right. I think the
right? Like that
pressure
is
of
a
actually being
fraction.
filmed, like, creates a mental drain that, like, people are just like, they're just living their lives. And I'm like, it's like running an extra battery or something. It's like you do the same thing, but then you check your battery power and it was drained 3 times as fast. Just the awareness, knowing that it's going to be scrutinized, and like the
Edited
extra
and
mental energy.
consumed and
Yeah.
yeah.
And like it does seem clear that they are not well, especially the women who had taken on additional filming opportunities. And that is all driven by, like, they know that this is their moment to capitalize on the opportunities that are being offered to them as mothers of very young children who already have like 1 or 2 full-time jobs. They know this is their moment to solidify some financial stability for their family, and they can't say no, but also it's like destroying them.
And Taylor said to Rebecca Jennings, the emotional toll it catches up to you. I think I've been go that I have not processed shit that actually hurts. She also admitted that she had had a quote mental breakdown in February while filming Secret Lives of Mormon Wives season 5. She said, I had a mental breakdown the other day on camera, and it was just like, well, we have to be here. We're contracted. No, this is not acting. I'm having a mental breakdown. I'm going home. That's it, period. And Rebecca writes, when I asked if there were ever a time she'd consider taking a step back from television or quitting it altogether, she replied, quote, right now has been the closest I've ever gotten.
Yeah, I mean, this all takes on a much darker valence, knowing that February is when has
These
been alleged
incidents,
these
yeah.
incidents between them. They have both made allegations of domestic abuse during that period. Like, this is part of what really gets me is that the show is benefiting from this tendency that Taylor has, and they're encouraging it. It sounds like she's being vulnerable, but in reality, we aren't actually seeing what's happening. It is kind of a way of laundering that in a sense to turn it into this sort of like messy, authentic girl brand. This is just me. I'm messy. Like, I crash out. Like, I had a mental breakdown when the reality is clearly, in some cases, something much darker and scarier.
And the
And so,
reality is also that to actually heal from trauma requires space and time. And like the one thing these women do not have in any capacity. And that doesn't mean it's an excuse for any abusive behavior. And obviously many of them are experiencing this and not lashing out in these ways. But the thing that they do not have is space and time for
yeah,
healing. And we're seeing this in like lesser ways with a lot of them. Like we do see
yeah,
like Jen and Whitney while they are filming Dancing with the Stars each have kind of breakdowns, emotional breakdowns. We see Michaela have to like take space from her marriage because she is having like these chronic health issues and there's no space for her to go to trauma therapy and that like and yes some of that is to do with the interpersonal dynamics, but another layer here is that they are also always filming, they are also always working, and their personal lives are that work.
yeah. And then they're all like held accountable to each other to keep doing that work, even when maybe it's not the healthiest thing for them because, well, everyone else is doing it, right? Like, why do you think you get to take a break and take care of yourself? I also keep thinking of Layla making that disclosure to her friends at a spa about her eating disorder, and I don't know how all those decisions were made, but, like, the idea that you're, like, kind of opening up about all of these insecurities you have about your body in a way and, like, disordered eating in a way that is going to, like, draw people's attention more to your body and that they had them film that at a place where they were all in swimsuits, I thought was, like, kinda crazy in retrospect. Like, just thinking about the ways that they are being asked to do this kind of self-disclosure and healing in these extremely, like, open, unprotected ways where it's all going to be seen and where it's going to be presented in a way that is to maximize entertainment value and not their well-being.
Yeah. And this goes into the fact that when it comes to Dakota and Taylor specifically, a couple who, of course, has a documented history of domestic disputes, even if you put aside the more recent allegations, like well documented, part of the storyline, part of canon is that they have a very unhealthy relationship that has escalated into some extremely dark places. And yet they have been thrown together repeatedly on camera, it seems by production at certain points. Like, obviously, they are co parenting, so there is always going to be that interaction. But we saw on season 4, for example, like Dakota being invited to a weekend away in Los Angeles that was completely unnecessary for him to be at. And it feels as though the show is squeezing entertainment value from putting these two people who are very unhealthy for each other into contact as much as possible over and over and over again.
Right. And that was framed as, well, Dad Talk invited him, and maybe that's true. We know that production and cast members talk about this, that production is often involved in decisions that cast members seem to make on camera that are shit stirring actions, right? Like, that's their job to some extent, is to make sure that the cast does things that will create storylines. But, like, that was a girls' trip, and the dads came to watch the kids. And despite the fact that Ever was not present, Dakota showed up when Taylor's friends were trying to give her the opportunity to, like, flirt and hang out with someone else, to, like, practice, being in the dating pool again, and suddenly Dakota's there, and what happens? Like, they have a huge, deeply uncomfortable fight in front of everyone, and then they have sex and are, like,
Think
seen
they
on
maybe
camera in
yeah. Yeah,
bed.
they have a fight and then they have sex and they have a really horrifying emotional back and forth again, to the point where another couple, like, comes out and just sits with them, basically, like, as witnesses, which also takes on a darker tone now in retrospect.
Yeah, I mean, watching some of these scenes, it's just so clear that the network and production see the financial value of perpetuating this storyline despite knowing the danger, the, like, physical and emotional danger that has come from these two being in explosive, like, emotional places together. And like, we can talk about the Bachelorette production, and we will, but, like, to have had to put cameras down on Secret Lives because of this altercation, it is wild, wild given all they must have known, and, like, even what we knew as the public. It is wild that they continued to facilitate the 2 of them being
Exactly.
together in emotionally heightened situations, that they even sprung it on Taylor at points, that they encouraged it, that they continued filming as the 2 of them got into these really heightened interactions, knowing what that has led to in the past, and it has led to, like, the harm of a child. Like, I just feel like that needs to be said out loud. Like, it's, like,
Yeah.
insane, and, I think even and this is part of what I wanna talk about at some point, like, even I got, like, numb to it, you know?
Well, yeah, I think that
You
that
just
is
normalize it. You're like, "Well, I'm watching this show and, oh, Dakota's back and he sucks, and, like, their dynamic is so bad." But it's almost like the memory of what happened, it becomes sort of feels distant, and you're just watching the show as it unfolds, and in retrospect, I'm like, we talked about how bad it was that they kept being thrown together, but, like, I don't think that I was horrified or outraged enough because it's crazy that they kept setting them up to be in those situations, just like it's crazy that but, like, Taylor and Dakota actually might be in some form of, like, really difficult to extricate themselves from abusive cycle. I don't know what the network's excuse is other than, like, we wanted the money because people would be watching them fight, and we would get money from that.
and it's that cynical nature that is very hard to swallow, and, like, I agree with you, and I think we've all done a lot of thinking about, like, okay, how did we normalize some of what we were seeing? Like, what responsibility do we bear? But I do believe that it is the job of these networks to, like, know more and exercise some judgment about what
Yeah.
they are putting out into the world, like, and
Yeah. This sort of feels like almost like a Enron moment or something, it's like a bubble bursting moment. It feels like, "Oh my god, wait, they all, like, were engaging in this incredibly risky behavior to make more money, knowing that it put the whole franchise at risk, and they continued, and because of
right.
that, now everything's fucked." Like, it really feels like one of those moments where you
Yeah.
realize that there were people gambling with the future of this business because they saw the opportunity for right now profits.
Yeah, I mean, the network essentially took a gamble, tied the Bachelor brand to a person who was famous for her lack of impulse control, terrible relationship decisions, abusive behavior. And this is what we're now dealing with the fallout of. And like as Andrea Gonzalez Ramirez at The Cut put it in a piece, quote, the most cynical read is that executives ignored red flags, glaringly obvious ones documented in past court proceedings, on social media, and on her other television series to make money off of someone who seems to be deeply unwell.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there is another way
To
to
read
read
it.
it, and people
Yeah.
talk about how the show has this sort of conservative, buttoned up image, and maybe they need to loosen up a little bit, like,
And I think we've
It's
often agreed with
right,
that,
and there
right?
certainly are ways to do it, like, Caitlin Bristow was an example of someone who pushed against that in interesting ways. You know, at the same time, there can be a reason sometimes why a show might need to be incredibly careful about who they put in the starring role of a show that has this reputation. One of the industry insiders who talked to Vulture about the fallout of this pointed out that, like, maybe something like this would not be a disaster for a Housewives show. And I think it's actually maybe not a complete disaster for Secret Lives. It's very bad, but I do think that it could proceed, hopefully, without either Taylor or Dakota.
Yeah.
Certainly without one of them. Hopefully, I think it's time for them both to part ways with the show. But, like, for a romantic reality dating series, this kind of thing is going to have much worse optics. This is not the behavior that viewers and advertisers expect from this kind of show, and that does have consequences. And so it is like bad business to take that kind of risk. And it was just hard watching season 4 not to like keep pointing to moments where you're like, they could have still pulled the plug. They could have still pulled the plug here. They could have pulled the plug there. They could have had someone on standby and been like, actually, Taylor's not ready. We're going to go with Latia. We're going to go with, some like TikToker that I don't know, like Alex Earl or whoever. I don't know. They could have had a plan B, C. They could have pulled the emergency brake at any point, and that makes it feel worse and worse. Had they maybe willed themselves into some like, "Oh, that incident from 2023 was a long time ago, and she's gotten help, and she's sober now, and, like, she's on a path to wellness." I certainly did that, right? I was worried about the involvement of her daughter, especially in those allegations. We talked about it when she was cast, and I was, like, troubled by it and the implications of casting her anyway. But we were sort of like, that was then, now she's sober, maybe she's healing. People aren't their worst decision they've ever made. We hope that this is
Right.
like,
And I
and they knew that that wasn't the
I
case.
think that's the thing. That's what gets me. It's like I don't want to say like having a generous read on someone is bad. We should be cynical. We should, you know, like it's like I think we also as the public we're not operating with all of the information and we're
Yeah.
not supposed to be. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean we shouldn't examine our own roles, certainly us as commentators in this. And I think we've been doing a lot of thinking about that. But the negligence on the part of the network is like unconscionable to me. And the way
Yeah.
that they actively facilitated dynamics that put people in danger.
Yeah. 100%. And like the more that comes out, the worse it looks, frankly. Like it is kind of, I can't even believe that they aired season 4 in the form that
I,
it existed in, that they didn't realize how bad it would make them look, like
I know.
how negligent it would make them look. But more and more is coming out. NBC reported recently that Secret Lives of Mormon Wives cast members told Hulu and ABC executives during a Zoom meeting on March 7th that they had concerns about continuing filming if Taylor Frankie Paul remained involved. That call was recorded and the recording was reviewed by NBC News. And so they have a lot of details. This was like just a couple weeks ago, right? This was months
March 7th.
after Bachelorette had wrapped, about 2 weeks after the second alleged domestic incident between Taylor and Dakota. So reportedly, there were 3 Disney executives present, including Rob Mills, VP of Unscripted. And during the call, they brought up alleged abuse involving Taylor Frankie Paul. They said that they didn't feel comfortable filming as long as she was being investigated. One cast member said, quote, "It's a dangerous situation. It's a sad situation, and we don't know how to navigate it because Taylor is our friend." They reportedly referenced distressing video recordings, though they didn't provide details. So it seems like other people in that cast group and social group have seen video of things that
Right, have
we have
seen it
not
or are
seen.
aware of it, and, like, again, it's the kind of thing where it's like, well, you as executives at this network should be the most interested in obtaining those recordings and reviewing them and making
Right.
sure that everyone is safe,
It
right? Like
seems like
that.
there's no basic like, I understand the impulse to bury your head in the sand and to be like, "I don't wanna hear it because I'm excited about this thing, and I don't want it to be ruined." Sorry, that is why there's a legal department. That is why there are
Right.
executives paid exorbitant sums of
That's the thing. I'm
money.
like, that's your job. That's your job, and you're actually being paid for the buck to stop with you.
Yeah, you actually it's your responsibility to make sure that you have all the information so that you can evaluate how to proceed in a responsible way. Like, one cast member asked the executives if they're aware she's hurt a child, and Rob Mills said, "I don't think for us getting into it is right." You know, it seems like he's kind of trying to, like, quell the situation without saying anything too that would sound too bad. Like, he's like, "The company's never going to hide anything that is wrong for the sake of business," but he's also saying, like, "I don't wanna get into it. I don't wanna know too much about it." Like, uh, and he's the executive who I think most Bachelor fans are most likely to know the name of. Like, he's, like, most visibly attached to the show of anyone on that team, and it's just really it's not a good look, to put
No,
it incredibly mildly.
it's certainly not. It just adds to the feeling that there was like a really irresponsible, willful ignorance on the part of the executive team, like involved in all of these shows, and that like a lot of harm has been done, especially to the human people at the center who are being made money off of
Yeah,
as a result of this negligence.
yeah. A lot of decisions were made at various points to get us here. We've touched on this a couple times, but, like, I do wanna, like, process a little bit, like, how we should think about our role in this, like, us as podcasters who cover the show, also audience members. None of us have the level of control or responsibility over this that Disney ABC executives do, obviously. Like, but we do have some form of power because like, without an audience, a show is not gonna make money. Commentators also have some power to, like, shape the narrative about what people might see as acceptable or unacceptable. Like, when I think about this, like, part of me is like, "We're suffering because of bad decisions," and part of me is like, "I made bad decisions," and part of me is like, "I tried to make good decisions, but did I?" It's
Yeah.
and
No, I think we're
we've been wrestling with
processing.
it.
Yeah, I think we are wrestling with it. And I think that's the healthy thing to do. I think we should be. And I don't mean like the larger we, I mean, we as the two of us, as part of this ecosystem, should be wrestling with it. And I think that we are. And I think that is the thing to do. I mean, I literally spent all of my therapy session today basically talking about
God,
this
imagine how
because
many people are in emergency therapy this week specifically to talk about this. It's, like,
yeah, no,
so
it feels
bad.
absurd. We do try so hard to be responsible in the way we talk about these shows, to wield the limited power that we do have responsibly, to like try and shape our reactions to the culture in ways that hopefully will like make the culture move forward, make people think, make things better. And I have such mixed feelings about how like what our role was in this. Like I feel for myself, I'm like, why did I feel drawn to Taylor Frankie Paul in all of these moments? Despite the fact that a lot of this information was out there. Like, was I too empathetic? Was it too convenient for me to like want to believe in the best of someone and believe in growth and also get to still have this really compelling, messy, quote unquote, person like on my screen? Like, what was the motivation behind wanting to have like the most generous outlook on this narrative? And like I think I'm still sorting through that on a personal level. And I like literally
Yeah.
came into my therapy session. I was like, am I a bad person for like feeling
The
this way? And
question
it's
we're
like,
all
you
asking
know,
ourselves this week and always. Yeah, I mean, of course not. You have like 40,000 followers.
Our podcast has 40,000 followers.
How could you be that
That's the
they
amount of
don't follow us
value
because we're
we
bad.
have. We're
No,
good.
I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I feel like I've been wrestling with this like pretty directly with Taylor Frankie Paul
like the whole
the
time.
whole time.
Yeah.
And like I remember talking about her being cast and like I was really stuck on that incident. I was like, I just don't know if I can feel good about, and at that point, there was also I was also watching Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, but I felt less like that kind of elevated her and sanitized her in this way. And I was really concerned about the implications of having a lead who had that on their record. And I at the same time, like I did start to get excited about having a lead who is confident in defining her own narratives and who is an experienced reality TV star and who is messy and would be super entertaining. And I sort of like stopped thinking about my critiques of it, right?
Yeah.
And I was listening to Bachelor Party because they recorded their immediate reactions to the cancellation. Juliette Littman, Callie Curry, and Rachel Lindsay were going to cover this season together, and they were on the mic to do their coverage when it was canceled. And like I don't think they were recapping it because at that point the video had dropped. They were going to discuss the allegations and the video, but like 3 minutes in, Rachel's like, "Oh my god, they canceled the show." So in real time, they're all, like, reflecting on how this happened and reflecting on, like, their own enthusiasm for covering the season and having a messy lead and being like, "What's our role in this?" And I really related to it, and
Yeah.
I thought Rachel was very thoughtful in outlining her thought process, and I was like, "That sounds so familiar to me," that, like, she was aware of the charges, but then she, like, got the impression from the coverage and from Taylor's own comments about how she would never hurt her children, that, like, maybe her child wasn't actually harmed, that that was one of those things that, like, didn't bear out in the investigation, and I'm watching Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. She seems like she's healing. And she's like, I chose not to look into it more deeply, and that's on me. And
Yeah, I
that's kind
feel
of
like
how I feel that,
that's
like,
how I feel too.
I wanted to get to keep enjoying this. And so I chose not to look into it more deeply. And I do feel like pretty shitty about that now. And I also think that, like, there is a question for me about whether the audience and commentators were a little too eager to look past this because of our own biases and that like Taylor Frankie Paul is a pretty young white woman with lots of money and like that doesn't mean that she was seen as fitting the exact mold that the Bachelorette normally takes, but if she didn't check those boxes, would she have been cast?
Well, I think we knew the answer to that was no, and I will
Right.
say we said that quite explicitly when she was cast.
Right, but I do think that that probably also played into the larger conversation about Taylor and the
Of
larger
course.
like, I think that we were aware of that and we talked about it, but, like, the fact that the audience so much of the audience was willing to get behind this, that so many commentators are very excited about her being cast, like, I can't help but think that the fact that she fits into those boxes was a big part of that, and, like, we know as we talked about that, like, a Black woman with this history would absolutely never, ever, ever have been cast. Um, would a man have been cast? A lot of people have been throwing that out there, and then a lot of women have been pushing back, saying, like, lots of men with domestic violence on their records are still famous celebrities, and, like, that is absolutely true, 100%. Like, tons of men survive these
So many.
allegations. It's kind of this weird thing where, like, I think we're almost more tolerant in some sense of men having this history because we expect it of men and we find it unnatural
Y
for women to have it, but at the
yeah.
same time, it's like we're less likely to initially believe it of the women because it doesn't
Yeah, it's
seem
like our
right to
initial
us.
reaction to a woman is both softer because we as a culture don't imagine that's like in the nature or whatever
Mhm.
of women. And at the same time, when a woman is proven to have some of this history definitively, I think she is more likely to be cast as like monstrous in
Yeah.
totality than a man. And
Completely irredeemable.
exactly. Like I think like all of that is true, and it's this very odd mix. And the Bachelorette is a because of its position in the culture and its female audience, I do think maybe in initial casting there would be less tolerance for a man in this position, and at the same time a man who this stuff came out about would be much more likely to have success and much more likely not to face consequences, for example, within like the justice system, long term, right? So it's like all of those things are kind of interlocking at the same time.
Right. Like, we've definitely there are men with these records have been, like, overrepresented compared to women in the franchise, right? But never as a lead has there been a male lead who um, had this history on the books at the time, especially in a way that was publicly known or that we were sure that the network must have absolutely known about, let alone the public. And I do think that it would be very hard to sell an abusive man as the lead of this show that is marketed to women. There would be, I think, immediate and sustained backlash. There was backlash to Taylor's casting, but I do think that the positioning there is a little bit different for the reasons that we have been going into. So, was she just like kind of this perfectly positioned set of identities in some sense that made a lot of people feel comfortable being like, well, she's just messy, but she's like at heart, she's like a good mom and woman, and she's gonna find health and liberation through this. And is that driven more by our biases than by, for example, like, you know, any more objective or rational assessment of her situation?
Maybe. Yeah. I think it's like hard to kind of fully tease out. And I think it's something that a lot of us are just like
Yeah.
going to continue to process for a while.
Yeah, something we talked about a little bit on Patreon and that I've been thinking about a lot is how this like may be a bit of an inflection point or a reckoning for the way that reality shows have been like capitalizing on like messy, raw, authentic women's emotional exploitation for entertainment. Like their emotional meltdowns, their crash outs. This is another messy situation, but the very same week we have the news out that Huda from Love Island, who was like sort of became this divisive but beloved figure because of her really out of control crash outs with like regarding her relationship with her partner, temporary partner on the show, like made her kind of this beloved figure with tons of stans who saw her as this really like unfairly treated messy queen. And it came out that her current boyfriend, who's also a reality star, his baby mama had received a restraining order against Huda because of some sort of incident involving like texts from Huda allegedly saying that she was going to like harm herself or her child or Louis's child if he didn't respond to her or speak to her. Louis and Huda are now back together. Like she has disputed all of this, but like that was the news that came out. And like at the same time, we're seeing this news about Taylor's issues being ongoing. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like we have these this new generation of like reality stars who are like these young women who have been held up as icons because of their emotional breakdowns. And
Yeah.
it just felt very reminiscent to me of what happened with like Britney Spears, what happened with Lindsay Lohan and Amanda Bynes.
Yeah, this like dual elevation and then like delight in tearing down, like somehow happening at the same
Yeah.
time. And this like elevation in part because of this emotional instability and sort of this like seeing the industry around making a ton of money off of this instability, and it's like no one's stepping in to intervene, to help, to like make the situation better. Instead, we are just like watching it unfold. And yeah, instead of maybe in paparazzi shots, that's happening in packaged reality television, but it is essentially the same thing. And in so many ways, it feels like we just have learned no lessons.
I feel like maybe we've learned some of the wrong lessons, to be
Also
honest.
possible.
Like, I worry that the lesson that a lot of people have taken away from this is that now if we see, for example, Britney Spears attacking a car with an umbrella, we should be like, "Yeah, girl, like, go off, queen." And because we were all so unfair to her, right? And, we've had this, like, period of reckoning with that, like, all the starlet scandal, industrial paparazzi complex at the aughts, where there was, like, all these big tabloid stories that were fed by watching these starlets have meltdowns. And then there were, for the last, like, 10 years or so, especially the last few years, there have been these ongoing attempts to really, like, reexamine how these young female celebs who are vulnerable and often, like, kind of unstable for various reasons were exploited because their meltdowns were entertaining. And, you know, Britney Spears and Amanda Bynes ended up in conservatorships for many years. Others suffered many years of career setbacks and
Yeah.
mental health struggles. And there was a sense that, like, we had all done very wrong by these women. And I'm worried that the takeaway has been that we should have just been like, I love seeing you melt down. That's actually so authentic and real of you. And now we've created, yeah, as a society, we've like repackaged this, or as an industry, they've repackaged it as reality shows. And then all the fans are like, yes, we love her. Like, that's my girl. Like, who hasn't crashed out? And is this progress? Like, yes and no. Like, I don't think that it was good at all to like villainize these women. And
Well, there just has to be like a middle ground. In either scenario, you are not seeing these people as full humans.
right. They're still being exploited.
Right. They're still being exploited. They're still being commodified. They're still being flattened in some capacity. And if you want the best and you have love for these people, you should want them to be safe, to not be causing harm to other people, right? Like that is ultimately what is going to be best for them and their lives. And it doesn't mean that we should be demanding perfection, but it does mean that we should recognize when our uh, consumption of these people, in whatever regard we are consuming them in, is
Yeah,
not helpful to anyone.
100%. And we were thinking about like why does so much entertainment revolve around these messy young women? And I do think I keep coming back to the idea that it's sort of both taboo breaking and also it confirms stereotypes. It's both
Yeah.
like women are supposed to be docile, gentle, and sweet. Why aren't they being any of those things? That's so shocking. And also it's like, well, women who do break those expectations are sort of monstrous, unnatural women. And this is like confirming that to me in a sense. And you can also have people who choose to narrativize that in other ways, and the audiences who narrativize that in other ways, like, well, she's flouting your expectations of what a woman is because she's iconic and strong and confident. She knows who she is. There are a lot of ways that we can try to reframe those narratives, but at the heart, we are watching women who are not mentally well often harm themselves and others. And
Yeah. And
sometimes
that's,
I
I,
think it feels more palatable to people because women are not perceived as capable of inflicting as much harm because they're not as physically strong as a group as men. And so they're less likely to be perpetrators of like severe ongoing physical abuse as men are. And so seeing them like lash out and act unstable is like maybe less terrifying to audiences. And it can be seen more as like, oh, look at like, oh, you're so cute when you're angry, right? Like, I'm not actually scared of you because I don't perceive you as a real threat. But like, it's not it's not taking us anywhere good. It's not taking them anywhere good to like keep feeding into that
no. And there,
behavior.
in a lot of these dynamics, as you're outlining, there is still an underlying misogyny at
Mhm.
play.
Totally. It undergirds everything. I recently watched Into the Manosphere, the Louis Theroux documentary, and, like, there's some, like, consonances, that are, like, uncomfortable because you see a lot of these manosphere influencers getting drawn into more and more antisocial behavior, like, literally ganging up and, like, jumping strangers in the street because they get validation for that from their followers. They get people sending them, like, gifts, like financial gifts. Like, it part of the economy is, like, doing things that are, like, messy and like, taboo breaking and shocking in ways that, like, gets your audience excited, and they fuel that, and that plays out very differently in these, like, different gendered spaces, but that is a really negative feedback cycle for us to be, like, feeding
100%.
into.
It's not good.
It's not good, guys. We're feeling really bad about all of this. So, how about The Bachelor? Can The Bachelor move forward from this?
I think maybe not. At bare minimum, it needs to take a really long break, and a lot of people need to look inward. Like, I do not have interest in
Yeah.
consuming a Bachelor season anytime soon. Like, there needs to be space. There needs to be reckoning.
When I was watching the video and the cancellation, like, all unfold, it's hard to see a way back from this, and, like,
That's the
the
thing.
brand has been so strong for so long that they keep being like, "Maybe we can retool in some way to compete in the current cultural context," which has changed so much from when they started the show, right? It's too powerful of a legacy brand to give that up. But will it still have that? Will it ever have that again? Like, it had already been so diminished over the years. It had lost so much of that, and they were really trying to vault it back to its glory days at the apex of, like, cultural conversation. And at this key moment, they whiffed and fell on their face in a way that I don't see how the brand recovers from. So then it's like at a certain point, is the brand not worth rebooting? Or should they just try to find
A
a
new
a new
yeah.
brand? Like,
I mean, maybe. I mean, like, it and there's, like, a sadness there, to be honest, like, as people who have followed this franchise and had this, like, love-hate relationship with it and had a lot of hope, I think,
yeah,
for at various moments, and also a lot of disappointment, like, it's just a very depressing end,
yeah.
but, like, I don't currently see a path forward, and, like, it's certainly not our responsibility to create one.
For a long time, I have felt, like, conflicted about, and I think you have too, about our work being so tied to this one flagship franchise. Like,
Of course, I
of
think that's why
course.
we've largely, in the last few years, tried to untangle it from being
Well,
so closely tied, right?
and it was a complicated thing, like, we never wanted our whole career to be tied up in The Bachelor. Like,
No.
we used to do this as a side project,
And
and
also, to be clear, like, we weren't allowed to do the podcast year round when we were doing it at
yeah,
HuffPost, like,
right. But the reality is, like, we were working on other stuff all the time. We were working
yes.
on our journalism that, and then we got laid off, and it's hard out there for an unemployed journalist. So we had this show we wanted to keep making, and what was immediately clear is that we did not want to be completely tied to Bachelor coverage year round because especially in the last 5 years as the show has really tumbled from cultural prominence, like, that didn't seem like the move, but also because a lot of the time I have, like, kind of lost the joy in covering the show because of all these
Well,
controversies.
exactly.
Racism controversies, sexual assault controversies, histories also of, like, domestic violence. Like, there are a plethora of scandals that have dimmed my joy in discussing the show, and I've also felt a responsibility to keep covering it because that is our work, and I'm not going to stop doing my job because it's not always fun, right? Or because, like, sometimes it's like I would rather just watch another show that doesn't make me think too much about the terrible context. Like, it's our job to look at that stuff. This just feels like the ultimate iteration of that. Like, I don't feel interested in
Absolutely.
covering The Bachelor right now, and that is really
No,
sad.
I've never felt less interested. I've
Yeah.
never felt more certain in the fact that we need to take a beat.
It just feels like there's nothing there to cover. I'm like, it's over. Like, this
Yeah.
season is up in smoke. What else do we have? When's the last time we had a Bachelor? When will we ever have one again? What about Paradise? Like,
And
it
I'm not
just
even
feels like
thinking
it's
about it. I'm like, I
suddenly
don't want them to.
right.
I want it to go away for a while, to be honest.
Yeah. And there are other shows that have kind of taken over the cultural place that was held by The Bachelor, like Love is Blind, like Love Island. And I have my issues with those shows as well, but I don't have the juice to talk about the show right now. And I think a lot of people are feeling the same way. Like, it's just hard to see the appetite for restarting the show. I just, yeah, I just like kind
No.
of can't believe that this is like maybe this is how it had to end because it was just not like they should have done this. It's so perfect, but like
But it's like they were never going to pull the plug
they didn't know how to pull the
unless something
plug.
catastrophic happened.
Yeah, like they wanted to try something big before they had to just pull the plug on this like 20-year massive tentpole brand.
20,
And they
almost 25 year.
yeah, and they kept trying things and they finally decided to like take their biggest swing of all and see if it could be revitalized. And they waited too long and then they swung too hard. And I
Yeah,
maybe
like
that is how it
you
was
could have
always going to
seen a
end.
way that they could have maybe done a middle ground, cast a Miranda from
Yeah.
Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and understood that it would not have had the same
Yeah.
level of excitement.
Well, I think they could have done a Latia. I don't know if Miranda is technically divorced yet.
Oh yeah,
Maybe.
I think she maybe isn't, but you know.
But I also think that they had a Latia who was a
And to be
popular
honest, I was
option
like genuinely intrigued by
and
I
they
think
could have and they
at the
had
time,
they've been putting her on Mormon Wives. They could
right.
have laid the groundwork and pulled her in more. That's she's not going to be as big and shiny of a brand as Taylor Frankie Paul, in part because of how controversial Taylor Frankie Paul is, and so they went with the shiniest option. I think ultimately we can all see that that was a mistake. But what is that incredibly overquoted, like Hemingway, description of going bankrupt? It's like slowly and then all at once.
Yes, yes.
That's what happened to the Bachelor franchise, I think.
It is. Catherine Van Arendonk at Vulture wrote a great piece, and she ended it with Paul's abortive stint as a bachelorette has shown the franchise has been eroded by an economy of reality influencers who are even more troubling and capable of capturing even more attention in a race to the bottom that cannot be reversed. The Bachelor, as it used to be, an often disastrous, sometimes entertaining, regularly troubling series, has engineered its own irrelevance.
We've like traveled a long way in this conversation, and there's a huge like blast radius to this situation. And then I just like zoom out for a moment and I'm like, it's just so fucking sad, like for the family involved. And like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like every part of it, we've just felt really sick. And then,
I mean, I think that's part of why we've just been struggling, like feeling it really
yeah,
in our bodies. Like this is a space we've been so embroiled in and attached to. And at the center of it, more important than anything else, is the safety of the people who are involved in this situation.
and I've had people like ask me if I'm okay. And I'm like,
Same.
I'm fine. Like, I'm not okay, but like, we're not part of this. I didn't want to have to cover this story, but like that's fine. I'm fine. And the Bachelorette going away is not the thing that makes me sick. Like that I
No,
almost I
no.
we always knew that this was a possibility to begin with. Also, it's just a TV show and like there are people who work on the show and all of these things. Like there are a lot of consequences for people, but fundamentally the thing that just really makes me sick is like knowing that this situation has been unfolding and the lack of care that has been taken and the idea that
Real people
we
have
might
been
have, like,
really
contributed to
harmed.
that in the even the smallest way to, like
Yeah.
it's just, like, it makes you sick, and, like, I think everyone who has consumed this news has felt really sick about it, to be
Yeah, no,
honest.
I think we're all kind of processing this together, and that's why, like, I did wanna end with just a few content creators that I've seen publish things that felt really, like, compassionate, and helpful in sort of, like, how should we wrap our heads around this, metabolize this, move forward as people who are, like, consuming this. I think, like, at the core of this is the fact that everyone deserves safety, both emotional and physical, and the fact that we all, I think, agree that we want everyone, including Taylor, Frankie, Paul, to get the support and the help that they desperately need in order to make sure everyone impacted is kept safe and okay. And I appreciated a video that that content creator Therapy Jeff published, just like something I thought was like quite lovely, just about what this moment means for people who have had this odd parasocial relationship with a figure like Taylor Frankie Paul. And he, in his video, I loved this piece of what he said. He said, loving someone and holding them responsible are not opposites. The easy responses are on the edges. The hard thing is staying in the middle, grieving the version of her that you thought you knew, and also being clear that her kids deserve safety, Dakota deserves safety, Taylor deserves safety too, and real accountability and real help, not another camera crew that's going to exploit her. And I do think that all of that is true, and like facing consequences is part of that. And like we can
Yeah.
want that accountability and also that help at the same time. That I like that he said that like that's not, those things aren't in conflict with each other. That's actually like loving ultimately.
Yeah. And something I think that we really saw on our screens in season 4 is that Taylor's friends and family think that they are helping her, but they are inadvertently, I think, enabling her by like tiptoeing her around so she doesn't fly off the handle at them, by pushing her to go take these high profile opportunities that she's not prepared to take. Like her mom, like insulting her when she learns that she's made a bad decision and then turning around and being like, you're a great person and you're going to be the Bachelorette and it's going to be amazing. Like, that's not accountability. And I don't know if anyone involved is like equipped to hold like an adult person like accountable in this way, but that's what is needed for her to like heal.
Yeah. Yeah. And space. And space. She needs space. Dakota needs space. The kids need space. Like everyone needs space away from
Yeah.
this mess. Um, Someone else who I thought had like a really kind of healing take on this was Zach Clark, who was, of course, known in Bachelor world for being Tayshia's final pick on her season of The Bachelorette. They, of course, are no longer together. He's been rumored for a while to be involved with Caitlin Bristow, but he also, of course, has been very open about his own addiction recovery journey, and he works in the behavioral healthcare space. And so he said, while I basically never comment on this franchise, he felt compelled to comment on this situation. And I just wanted to kind of wrap us up with a clip of what he said.
This one feels close to home. This one feels close to home. Been doing this work for a long time, behavioral health care, and here's what I know. If ABC's canceling this show, there are millions and millions and millions of dollars tied to that production. It's serious. Which leads me to my next thought. None of that matters. The other guys on the cast doesn't matter. The money being lost doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what matters are the human lives involved here. So there's Taylor Frankie Paul. There's this guy that she is in a relationship with, which is clearly very abusive and toxic. There are kids and there are families. It is apparent to me that there is a lot of help that is needed. And the only thing I care about, and really I think anyone should care about, is that the people involved get the support and are given the permission to do the work that they need to do in order to heal. I saw the video, I saw a piece of it. It's bad, it's scary, and I know that there's a lot of underlying trauma and substance abuse and who knows what else here. My hope is that there is a happy ending to this story, and my hope is that the internet and the people that have the ability to turn their phones around and give an opinion take it easy on everyone involved, because that's really what love and empathy and compassion looks like. It was given to me when I was struggling, and so that's my expectation for others.
It's been interesting watching the conversation start to unfold and seeing what different people involved in the franchise, not involved in the franchise, people with different backgrounds of expertise or like personal experience, like what people have been saying. And um, I really appreciated his words. And I know you did too, Emma.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know. I'm getting so emotional right now.
I don't know. It's just like it is very emotional. Like we really want everyone to be okay. And it's it's really heartbreaking to see how bad things were, and it's also really heartbreaking and scary to think that that could be the state of things again potentially.
Yeah.
And to think that like that could have been facilitated or papered over for the sake of like entertainment, money, is really it rattles you. And given the way that a lot of the history of the show over the last 10 years, it does feel in a sense like darkly fitting that the show would end in a way that does feel so like dark and sad and scary. It is a show that has taken us to these places before, and this is beyond. So it's been very emotional. I'm sure that like if you've been following the coverage, that it has
Been
probably
heavy.
been hard, yeah, to
Yeah, it's just a
process.
lot, I think, for anyone, even those of us obviously not intimately involved in any way, to process and metabolize and figure out how we can move forward and make this conversation as healthy for everyone involved as it can be. And I think that's why the only way I feel like I knew how to wrap up this conversation is to center that
Yeah.
compassion.
Yeah. I hope that we don't see The Bachelor come back anytime soon. I hope we don't see Taylor, Frankie, Paul anytime soon. And I hope that there is a lot of healing and that her kids are safe. Um, and I hope that there has been some reflection and learning, if not on a human level, then at least about the like significant financial and legal risk that is taken when these things are not properly like considered, because this is this
Yeah.
yeah, this is just a huge shit show and deeply shocking on every level. And I hope that everyone, if you have been following the news, if you have seen the video, especially if you have any sort of like personal history with anything in this area,
Just
I
take
hope that
care.
you're taking care of yourselves. And we will be reconsidering our upcoming slate,
Yeah, I
obviously,
think we'll
given that
we'll
there's
maybe
no
be
show to recap.
we'll be diving
Um,
into some other shows if there are things that you're seeing in the culture that you would love to see us talk about. Definitely we're always open to hearing those thoughts and ideas. Um and yeah, for now I think we need to leave it here. So on that note, That is it for this episode of Love to See It with Emma and Claire. If you're watching this on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe to our channel.
Love to See It is a presentation of Odyssey. The show is produced by us, Claire Fallon and Emma Gray. Our production assistant is Tatiana Knie-Smith, who also edits our video. This episode's audio was edited by John Bahar. Our theme music is by Tamar Haviv, and our art is by Aaron Nestor.
If you like our show, remember to follow us, rate us 5 stars, leave a review, and of course, spread the word to all of your friends about Love to See It.
If you want to get in touch, you can email us at claireandemmapod@gmail.com.
You can also find us on TikTok at Love to See It Pod and on Instagram at Claire and Emma Pod. And you can find our newsletter Rich Text on Patreon at patreon.com/richtext. I'm also on Blue Sky at Emma Gray and on Instagram at Emma Lady Rose.
And I'm at Claire E. Fallon. Special thanks to the team at Odyssey: Eric Donnelly, Peter Arriaga, Kate Rose, Moira Curran, Melissa Wester, and Hillary Shook.
We'll be back soon.